Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Johann Faust. According to the stories passed down about this man, it is said that he was an alchemist and astrologer who lived in Germany during the early 1500s. It is said that in his plight to become the smartest man in the world, while also enjoying as many earthly pleasures as possible, he summoned the help of a demon named Mephistopheles. There are terrible stories about how cruel and truly evil this man was, and as a professor, it is said he looked down on everyone else. Local priests apparently believed that he had actually made a deal with the devil in which he sold his soul to him, and there are also other stories that say his pet dog was actually a demon who was able to shapeshift. During his life, he did publish several grimoires, and in 1540, while conducting some sort of alchemic experiment, his laboratory exploded. In our number 9 spot today, we have Jonathan Moulton. Jonathan is a man who was born in 1726, and he was known for his military career. He served in King George's War as well as in the French and Indian Wars, but after his service is where the story really starts. Basically, after his time fighting was over, he went on to become one of New England's wealthiest men. This caused heads to swivel and rumors to swirl because this wasn't something that was normally seen. This all gave way for the rumor that Jonathan had struck this luck of fortune because he was actually working with the devil. People began to say that for financial gain, he in turn gave his eternal devotion and even his soul over to the devil. The devil would visit him every month in order to fill up his boot with gold. You know what happens with things like this though, people get greedy. It is said that despite this lavish lifestyle he was already living, he wanted more, and this led him to make the mistake of trying to trick the devil. He cut a hole in the floor above his basement and placed a boot over it, which also had a hole in the heel. Of course, he did this so that when the devil came with the gold, he'd get a whole basement full rather than just the boot. But the devil of course caught on. From there, it is said that the devil burned down Jonathan's house along with all of the gold that lay inside. In our number 8 spot today, we have Niccolo Paganini. If you search people who made a deal with the devil, Niccolo is one of the first names that pops up. Niccolo was a professional violinist who was born in 1782. His parents began to send him to lessons when he was just 5 years old, and by age 15 he was already touring the world because he was so talented. What's really interesting about Niccolo and his story, other than his obvious musical genius however, is the rumors surrounding his talent and subsequent recognition. According to some, people believe that his own mother summoned the devil in order for her son to be the extreme talent that he was. There are many modern diagnoses that could potentially explain some of what made Niccolo so talented, and I mean, we all know quite well that sometimes people are just born with extreme talent, but of course in the early 1800s people and their imaginations certainly ran wild. The final reason why people believe he may have made a deal with the devil is because shortly before his death, he was quite sick. The doctors had a feeling he was nearing death, so they sent in a priest to pray over him. When he first saw the priest, it is said that he freaked out and sent the priest away. Many people believe that him pushing the priest away was only a confirmation of the fact that he was working with the devil. In our number 7 spot today, we have Theophilus of Adana. For this one, we are taking it back a little bit all the way to 538 AD. Theophilus of Adana was a cleric in the Roman Catholic Church. So basically one day he was elected to become the new bishop, but he ended up denying the offer, as it is said he wanted a more priestly sort of position instead of one that came with all of that power and responsibility. It is said that he wanted the position of archdeacon, which would have seen him controlling where the donation money went. So apparently, in passing on this bishop position, he thought that if he gave the position to his rival, then his rival should at least be grateful enough to give him the position he wanted, but of course, that did not happen. This new bishop gave away the seat that Theophilus wanted and instead gave him the position of being a humble cleric. This made Theo super angry, and this is when he thought that maybe the church isn't as holy as he once thought they were. This is when he decided to summon the help of Satan. He ended up signing a contract with Satan in his own blood. He denounced Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and it is said that with the help of Satan, he was once again voted into the bishop position, and this time he accepted. At this point in time, it is said that he felt so guilty he confessed to this deal with the devil, and the priest who he confessed to decided that they should burn the blood-signed contract. For a second, Theo looked up, but then suddenly he collapsed and died. Many people believe that it was because he had broken his contract. In our number 6 spot today we have Giuseppe Tartini. Giuseppe was an Italian violinist and composer who lived during the 1700s. He went on to compose a song called The Devil's Trill Sonata. Called The Devil's Trill Sonata. And not only this, but he claimed to wake up one night to find Satan sitting on the edge of his bed playing the violin. Seems as though the devil really likes violins, apparently. What's extremely curious is after this alleged encounter, it is said that Giuseppe's violin skills hit heights never seen before. He was able to suddenly play extremely complicated trills that are impossible for most musicians. Apparently even today the sonata is too difficult for most musicians to play, which is why people believe that perhaps this story really was true. In our number 5 spot today we have Urbain Grandier. Born in 1590, Urbain was a French Catholic priest who was known as being a little promiscuous with some of the nuns. Look, there's no judgment from me at all, but I'm just saying, the Catholic Church now doesn't like that. I can't imagine pre-1600s Catholic Church just being cool with that, but anyway, it is said that he actually took quite a public stance against the church's view on celibacy. Because of his escapades, there were points where people who had indulged with him were now accusing him of witchcraft and using dark magic in order to tempt them. This led to a trial which did end in acquittal, but France's chief minister did not like Urbain at all. The priest had apparently published some less than kind criticism about him, so naturally he returned the favor and ordered a second trial. This time Urbain was put through some grueling interrogations, and while it certainly was inhumane, it led to the discovery of quite a document. One that was apparently found in his belongings. It was a contract that is said to have been written in Latin and covered with strange symbols. The contract was signed by Urbain as well as several demons, including the devil himself. Basically, the contract promised him the love of women, the respect of monarchs, that sort of thing, in exchange for his allegiance to the devil. In the end, this led to Urbain being found guilty of making a deal with the devil, and he was sentenced to death. In our number 4 spot today we have Aleister Crowley. This man is quite well known for being the leader of an occult group, and this really does stem back even into his childhood. It is said that quite early on Aleister started calling himself the Beast and the Antichrist, and he is even quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. In one of his books he wrote, quote, "I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those 3 long hours. God conquered. Now I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?" Many people believe that perhaps he made a deal with Satan, but it is possible that these are just rumblings based on Aleister's teachings and beliefs. In our number 3 spot today we have Jack Parsons. Jack was a man who was born just a few years prior to the Wright brothers flying the first airplane, and being born at a time like this had him growing up dreaming of and reading sci-fi novels about rocket ships taking people to space. It is said that this love of rocket ships and these dreams of going to space are what led him to summoning the devil in order to make a deal. Jack wanted to sell his soul in exchange for a rocket ship. This deal didn't end up working, but Jack continued to study science as he grew older. Later in life he stumbled upon the teachings of Aleister Crowley that we just talked about, and this is when he tried his hand at summoning things again. This time he tried to summon a goddess named Babylon that was said to possibly help men get to the moon one day. Technically, in some ways, it worked, because Jack Parsons ended up helping create the jet fuel that is said to still be used today. Maybe it was his original deal with the devil, maybe it was the goddess, or maybe it was just good old passion and drive that did it. I guess that all depends on what you believe. In our number 2 spot today we have Christoph Hasemann. Back in 1677, Christoph was an artist who was working on a castle in Austria. He was so talented at his job that he had been commissioned by the nobles to do this work. There were rumblings about how he may have sold his soul to the devil, but no one was sure of it until it is said that Christoph confessed. He said he had 9 years prior and that he regretted it very much now and actually wanted an exorcism. They demanded to know if he was a practicing witch, but in the end it was decided that he was not, and that instead the devil just had a really strong hold on him. The local priest began giving Christoph exorcisms, and during these sessions Christoph explained that he had these intense visions where he was coming face to face with the devil, who was in the form of a dragon. The dragon was holding the contract that held Christoph's soul, and this is when he was able to rip it out of the dragon's talons. When he woke up it seemed as though he was cured. After this he began painting pictures of the devil, and he even painted a story with multiple panels that told the story of how he sold his soul and how they helped him get it back. In our number 1 spot today we have Antoine Rose. This woman from the 15th century is often credited with our modern day image of a witch riding on a broomstick. She became known as the Witch of Savoy, and she is said to have confessed to regularly meeting with the devil. I mean, let's be honest, history doesn't exactly have a good record with those accused of witchcraft, so it isn't quite clear if this deal with the devil was real, or if perhaps Antoine could just add 1 + 1 and then suddenly she was accused of being a witch and had to find a way to try and defend herself. Legend goes that she was in a position where she was in dire need of money, and when she asked her neighbor for help, they led her to a group of people who convinced her to ask the devil for help. When the devil appeared, he agreed to help her, of course in exchange for her rejection of God and her promise to worship him. Story has it that she said the devil had a low, raspy voice when he appeared to her in human form, and she also apparently said that she was quite afraid of him, which, I don't know, personally makes a lot of sense. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot we have Elvis Presley. There have been rumors and conspiracy theories surrounding Elvis Presley's success and his alleged deal with the devil to achieve fame and fortune. Some fans and theorists believe that Presley's success was not solely due to his musical talent, but rather his involvement in the occult and the supernatural. One of the most prevalent rumors surrounding Presley's alleged deal with the devil is the fact that he was born a twin, but his brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. According to the rumor, Presley made a pact with the devil to trade his twin brother's life for his own success. I personally think that that is a particularly cruel rumor and conspiracy, and am much more on the side of those who believe that Presley's interest in mysticism and the occult was evidence of his involvement in dark practices. Some point to his love for black magic and spiritualism as proof that he made a deal with the devil. Despite the persistent rumors, there is no concrete evidence that Elvis Presley ever sold his soul or made a deal with the devil. These rumors are likely just a product of his enduring fame and the allure of the supernatural. In our number 9 spot today we have Justin Bieber. I'll be honest, I am a believer, so it was news to me when I found out that some people think he too has sold his soul. Some have pointed to his music videos and lyrics, as well as his public behavior and controversial actions as evidence of his supposed pact with the devil. People believe that Bieber's meteoric rise to fame and success at a young age was too sudden to be natural, and that he must have made a deal with the devil to achieve it, while others point to his lyrics, music videos, and imagery, which they believe contain hidden symbols and messages associated with the occult. Many of these claims are most likely the result of speculation, rumors, and conspiracy theories fueled by Bieber's controversial personal life and the internet's tendency to spread sensationalized stories, but hey, who am I to say for sure? In our number 8 spot today we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noblewoman who lived from August of 1560 to August of 1614. She was born into one of the oldest and most powerful families in Transylvania, and she was well educated and ran various estates and bore many children. Oh, and this is all happening while she is also killing young women and bathing in their blood. Yeah, weird and gross, and also terrible. Elizabeth is known for killing her servants and bathing in their blood as she believed it would keep her young. Not only this, but she is also said to have made a deal with the devil in order to gain this sort of power. All accounts of Elizabeth remember her as a terrible, evil person. It is said that her number of victims most likely ranges somewhere from 175 to 200, but some people claim that it might be as many as 600. It is no wonder she is referred to as Countess Dracula. In our number 7 spot today we have Madonna. Madonna has been accused of making a deal with the devil for her success and longevity in the music industry. The rumors have persisted over the years due to her use of provocative and controversial imagery in her performances, as well as her supposed connections to secret societies and the occult. Some people believe that her massive success in the music industry and her often controversial behavior are all signs that she made a deal with the devil. Others point to her use of religious imagery in her music and performances, which they believe is a deliberate attempt to subvert traditional religious values. Some people just can't get over that the girl wants to have fun, and she's been having fun in the public eye for decades now. I get it, Madonna gets a little carried away from time to time, but that doesn't mean the woman sold her soul. Or does it? In our number 6 spot today we have Johann Faust. According to the stories passed down about this man, it is said that he was an alchemist and astrologer who lived in Germany during the early 1500s. It is said that in his plight to become the smartest man in the world, while also enjoying as many earthly pleasures as possible, he summoned the help of a demon named Mephistopheles. There are terrible stories about how cruel and truly evil this man was, and as a professor, it is said that he looked down on everyone else. Local priests apparently believed that he had actually made a deal with the devil in which he sold his soul to him, and there are also stories that say his pet dog was actually a demon who was able to shapeshift. During his life, he did publish several grimoires, and in 1540, while conducting some sort of alchemic experiment, his laboratory exploded. Just thought that was a fun little anecdote to share with you guys. In our number 5 spot today, we have Michael Jackson. Definitely one of the celebrities who has had the most connections to the occult. Some fans and theorists believe that Jackson's success, talent, and enduring popularity could not be attributed solely to his hard work and dedication, but rather to a supernatural pact that he had made. One of the most persistent rumors surrounding Jackson's supposed deal with the devil was that he made the pact at the age of 12. According to this rumor, Jackson traded his soul to achieve success in the music industry. Others have pointed to Jackson's fascination with the occult and his interest in spiritual practices as evidence of his involvement in the dark arts. Some also cite his dramatic physical transformations as proof of his alleged deal with the devil. At the end of the day, did Michael Jackson have a deal with the devil? Well, I guess I'll just let you decide for yourself. It's my way of saying no, none of these people did, because the devil doesn't exist. In our number 4 spot today, we have Aleister Crowley. This man is quite well known for being the leader of an occult group, and this really does stem back even into his childhood. It is said that quite early on, Aleister started calling himself the Beast and the Antichrist, and he is even quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. In one of his books, he wrote, quote, "I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those 3 long hours. God conquered. Now, I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?" Many people believe that perhaps he made a deal with Satan, but it is possible that these are just rumblings based on Aleister's teachings and beliefs. In our number 3 spot today, we have Beyonce. Queen Bee, an absolute living legend. Like her husband though, who we spoke about on part 1, Beyonce has also been accused of being a member of the Illuminati and selling her soul for fame and fortune. The claim that Beyonce sold her soul is a conspiracy theory that has been circulating online for several years. However, there is no evidence to support this claim. Just don't want the bee people to come for me. The belief that Beyonce sold her soul likely stems from her success, which some people may find hard to believe without a supernatural explanation. I do understand that one. I mean, did you see Homecoming? Additionally, her music and performances often incorporate religious and spiritual imagery, which may further fuel the rumors. Also forgot to include that people think she's a part of the Illuminati. Okay, that's important. People think that she is directly related to a satanic organization. The success of talented and hardworking individuals like Beyonce is typically the result of dedication, perseverance, and talent, but some people just swear it's soul selling. In our number 2 spot today, we have Theophilus of Adna. For this one, we are taking it back a little bit, all the way to 538 AD. Theophilus of Adna was a cleric in the Roman Catholic Church. So basically, one day he was elected to become the new bishop, but he ended up denying the offer, as it is said that he wanted a more priestly sort of position instead of one with all of that power and responsibility. It is said that he wanted the position of archdeacon, which would have seen him controlling where the donation money went. So apparently, in passing on this bishop position, he thought that if he gave this bishop position to his rival, then his rival should at least be grateful enough to give him the position he wanted. But of course, this did not happen. The new bishop gave away the seat that Theophilus wanted and instead gave him the position of being a humble cleric. This made Theo super angry, and this is when he thought that maybe the church isn't as holy as he once thought they were. This is when he decided to summon the help of Satan. He ended up signing a contract with Satan in his own blood. He denounced Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and it is said that with the help of Satan, he was once again voted into the bishop position, and this time he accepted. At this point in time, it is said said that he felt so guilty he confessed to this deal with the devil, and the priest who he confessed to decided that they should burn the blood-signed contract. For a second, Theo looked up, but then suddenly he collapsed and died. Many people believe that it was because he had broken his contract. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Jonathan Moulton. Jonathan is a man who was born in 1726, and he was known for his military career. He served in King George's War as well as in the French and Indian Wars, but after his service is where the story really starts. Basically, after his time fighting was over, he went on to become one of New England's wealthiest men. This caused heads to swivel and rumors to swirl because this wasn't something that was normally seen. This all gave way for the rumor that Jonathan had struck his luck of fortune because he was actually working with the devil. People began to say that for financial gain, he in turn gave his eternal devotion and even his soul over to the devil. The devil would visit him every month in order to fill up his boot with gold. You know what happens with things like this though, people get greedy. It is said that despite this lavish lifestyle he was already living, he wanted more, and this led to him making the mistake of trying to trick the devil. He cut a hole in the floor above his basement and placed a boot over it, which also had a hole in the heel. Of course, he did this so that when the devil came with the gold, he'd get a whole basement full rather than just a boot. But the devil certainly caught on. From there, it is said that he burned down Jonathan's house along with all of the gold that lay inside. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Led Zeppelin. Rock and roll and Satanism have long been connected in some people's eyes, so it's no wonder that legendary band Led Zeppelin has experienced some of these dark connections. Back in January of 1982, evangelical broadcaster Paul Crouch began accusing different rock artists of hiding messages in their songs through backmasking, and one example that he pointed out was the classic Zeppelin tune Stairway to Heaven. He directly pointed to a segment of the song where he claimed that when played in reverse, he was hearing the words, "Oh, here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He will give those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan." Since this accusation of satanic messages, this has definitely become one of the most famous instances of alleged backmasking, which has only added to the legacy of Zeppelin. In our number 9 spot today, we have Bob Dylan. Not necessarily who I expected to put on this list, but there was an interesting interview back in 2004 that made many people speculate that the musician might have sold his soul. In the interview, he was explaining that he owes his years of fame and success to a deal he made. The interviewer asked, "Why are you still out here?" To which Dylan replied, "It goes back to that destiny thing. I made a bargain with it, you know, long time ago, and I'm holding up my end." The interviewer, of course, had to follow up on what that cryptic message was, so he asked, "What was your bargain?" Dylan replied, "To get where I am now." The interviewer asked, "Should I ask who you made the bargain with?" He replied, "With the chief commander." The interviewer clarified, "On this earth?" To which he answered, "In this earth and in a world we can't see." I can totally see why some people decided to draw their own conclusions from this. I mean, it sounds like he is basically speaking in riddles. While he doesn't outright say that he sold his soul, some believe that this is what he was trying to say in that interview. In our number 8 spot today, we have Ozzy Osbourne. One of the most famous rock stars ever, Ozzy has long been connected to the occult. I mean, Ozzy, Prince of Darkness, didn't just come from nowhere. Aside from the rumors, however, Ozzy has been fairly open about his personal connection to the devil. In a 1984 issue of Hit Parader, Ozzy said, quote, "I really wish I knew why I've done some of the things I've done over the years. Sometimes I think that I'm possessed by some outside spirit. A few years ago, I was convinced of that. I thought I truly was possessed by the devil. I remember sitting through The Exorcist a dozen times, saying to myself, yeah, I can relate to that." He even has expressed confusion over whether or not he's a medium for some kind of outside source, or if something much more sinister is at play. When speaking of actually selling his soul, well, Ozzy had some less than comforting things to say. He said, quote, "I already have. Well, you sell your soul to the devil when you do something yourself that you shouldn't, and I already have. I've lived my life to the fullest. If there's an afterlife, I've got a good spot in the furnace. You know?" I'll see you there, Ozzy. In our number 7 spot today we have Jay-Z. Rapper Jay-Z has long had some interesting stories and conspiracies surrounding him, including his alleged connection to the Illuminati. You know, this secret society that conspiracy theorist claims possesses this crazy, unknowable power. People often make this connection with a lot of people in the rap and hip-hop industry, but it happens to Jay-Z often due to him referencing the devil multiple times in his music videos. I mean, especially in the song Lucifer. People also make connections to certain imagery shown in his music videos and even in his merch or the things he wears himself as well, to things like the occult and Satan himself. Whether it's a pentagram, the all-seeing eye, or the phrase "do what thou wilt," it seems as though Jay-Z has some people in a satanic panic. In our number 6 spot today we have Robert Johnson. Well known for being one of the most incredible guitar players of all time, Robert was one of those people that some members of the public simply just couldn't see how he was so talented, so of course that led to some extremely haunting rumors swirling about him. Some people claimed that he was only able to gain his talent through supernatural means, which many claimed was by way of the devil. Story goes that Robert headed to the crossroads where the devil took his guitar, tuned it, and showed him how to master the blues. Unfortunately, however, with this eerie tale comes a very tragic end. Some say that in exchange for his abilities, Robert had to offer the later half of his life. He exchanged much of his life in order to make this deal. Sadly, Robert would pass away at the exceptionally young age of 27. Many claim this was actually due to a poisoning made by a jealous man. Whatever the real story behind his life, talents, and tragic death, the legacy of Robert certainly lives on. He was an incredibly prolific musician who left behind quite the record collection. In our number 5 spot today we have Niccolo Paganini. Niccolo was a professional violinist who was born in 1782. His parents began to send him to lessons when he was just 5 years old, and by age 15 he was already touring the world because he was so talented. What's interesting about Niccolo and his story, other than his obvious musical genius however, is the rumors surrounding his talent and subsequent recognition. According to some, people believe that his own mother summoned the devil in order for her son to be the extreme talent that he was. There are many modern diagnoses that could potentially explain some of what made Niccolo so talented, and I mean, we all know quite well that sometimes people are just born with extreme talent, but of course, in the early 1800s, people and their imagination certainly ran wild. The final reason why people believe Niccolo may have made a deal with the devil is because shortly before his death, Niccolo was quite sick. The doctors had a feeling he was nearing death, so they sent in a priest to pray over him. When Niccolo first saw the priest, it is said that he freaked out and sent the priest away. Many people believe that him pushing the priest away was only a confirmation of the fact that he was working with the devil. In our number 4 spot today we have Giuseppe Tartini. Okay, so this story is one that is kind of similar to Niccolo's, but even more strange. Giuseppe was an Italian violinist and composer who lived during the 1700s. He went on to compose a song called The Devil's Trill Sonata, and not only this, but he also claimed to wake up one night to find Satan sitting on the edge of his bed playing the violin. It seems as though the devil really likes violins, apparently. What's extremely curious is after this alleged encounter, it is said that Giuseppe's violin skills hit heights never seen before. He was able to suddenly play extremely complicated trills that are impossible for most musicians, and apparently even today the sonata is too difficult for many musicians to play, which is why people believe that perhaps this story really was true. In our number 3 spot today we have Jack Parsons. Jack was a man who was born just a few weeks prior to the Wright brothers flying the first airplane, and being born at a time like this had him growing up dreaming of and reading sci-fi novels about rocket ships taking people to space. It is said that this love of rocket ships and these dreams of going to space are what led to him summoning the devil in order to make a deal. Jack wanted to sell his soul in exchange for a rocket ship. This deal didn't end up working, but Jack continued to study science as he grew older. Later in life, he stumbled upon the teachings of Aleister Crowley and tried his hand at summoning things again. This time he tried to summon a goddess by the name of Babylon that was said to possibly help men get to the moon one day. Technically, in some ways, it worked, because Jack Parsons ended up helping create the jet fuel that is said to still be used today. Maybe it was his original deal with the devil, maybe it was the goddess, or maybe it was just good old passion and drive that did it. Guess that all depends on what you believe. In our number 2 spot today, we have Christoph Heismann. Back in 1677, Christoph was an artist who was working on a castle in Austria. He was so talented at his job that he had been commissioned by the nobles to do this work. There were rumblings about how he may have sold his soul to the devil, but no one was sure of it until it was said that Christoph confessed. He said he had 9 years prior and that he regretted it very much now and actually wanted an exorcism. They demanded to know if he was a practicing witch, but in the end it was decided that he was not, and that instead the devil just had a very strong hold on him. The local priest began giving Christoph exorcisms, and during these sessions, Christoph explained that he had these intense visions where he was coming face to face with the devil, who was in the form of a dragon. The dragon was holding the contract that held Christoph's soul, and this is when he was able to rip it out of the dragon's talons. When he woke up, it seemed as though he was cured. After this, he began painting pictures of the devil, and he even painted a story with multiple panels that told the story of how he sold his soul and how they helped him to get it back. In our number 1 spot today, we have Antoine Rose. This woman from the 15th century is often credited with our modern day image of a witch riding a broomstick. She became known as the Witch of Savoy, and she is said to have confessed to regularly meeting with the devil. I mean, let's be honest, history doesn't exactly have a good record with those accused of witchcraft, so it isn't quite clear if this deal with the devil was real, or if perhaps Antoine could just add 1 + 1 and then suddenly she was accused of being a witch and had to find a way to try and defend herself. Legend goes that she was in a position where she was in dire need of money, and when she asked her neighbors for help, they led her to a group of people who convinced her to ask the devil for help. When the devil appeared, he agreed to help, of course, in exchange for her rejection of God and her promise to worship him. Story has it that she said the devil had a low, raspy voice when he appeared to her in human form, and she also apparently said that she was quite afraid of him. Can we really blame her?
In our number 10 spot, we have Angelina Jolie. Okay, I know you're thinking, what? The beautiful looking angel that is Angelina Jolie sold her soul to Mr. Satan himself? Probably. Apparently in 2016, a secret tape of Angelina surfaced on YouTube, and on this tape, it was a young 23-year-old Angelina in 1999 where she is being secretly recorded in a private convo with some of her friends. Allegedly, Jolie is found telling her friends about some kind of celebrity initiation that is often misunderstood as a form of sadism and masochism combined. Then apparently Angelina talks about her experience and how during the ritual, the initiated people are tied up and tortured, and well, just Google it because it's not very PG, but supremely sadistic and masochistic if you ask me. She then goes on to talk about how she got a tattoo after the ritual and how she had to kill a snake as a sacrifice. So yeah, sounds like she quite frankly made a deal with the devil. In our number 9 spot, we have Katy Perry. Yikes, I hate putting her in this list, but I have to acknowledge something that she did say that does make people suspicious of her. It has long been rumored that celebrities sign contracts with the devil in order to establish themselves in Hollywood, and so it may not surprise you to hear of Katy Perry saying that she sold her soul to the devil. Yes, one could argue it is an expression, but that expression came from somewhere, and her words came from somewhere. Either she believes that she makes music that she doesn't really love because someone is telling her to, which sounds like low vibes to me, or she literally sold her soul to the devil himself. When asked about her first album, which was a gospel album, Katy is quoted as saying, "Yeah, I released a gospel record when I was 15 because I grew up in a household where all I ever did was sing the gospel music, and my parents are both traveling ministers. And so I kinda sang about what was going on in my life at 15. And that's how I got introduced to the music industry. I swear I wanted to be like the Amy Grant of music, but it didn't work out, and so I sold myself to the devil." Coming up at our number 8 spot, we have Michael Scott. No, not Michael Scott from The Office. That great, beautiful angel would never sell his soul to the devil. This is Michael Scott from the year 1175. Yes, a very, very long time ago. Michael studied at Oxford and traveled around England until he planted his roots in Sicily and became the court astrologer to Frederick II. People always speculated that he might be in cahoots with Lucifer, as as he was quite vocal about how against the black arts he was. The people believed that to be a distraction from the fact that he actually participated in it. He also wrote a lot of text on necromancy and black magic under the guise of science. So that didn't help his cause. There was all kinds of rumors about him, including one where he supposedly conned the devil into helping him make a railroad. He apparently had demon familiars that would fetch him the finest international delicacies, and that he traveled by way of a demon sea creature. He was known to having many ritual sites, and so the people have concluded that he was BFFs with the devil. In our number 7 spot, we have Christoph Heinzmann. Christoph Heinzmann is a painter from the 17th century. Apparently in 1677, Christoph was found in such a state that it was believed that he had been tortured by a witch's curse. When questioned by the authorities, Heinzmann admitted that his state was his own fault, as he had signed a pact with the devil 9 years earlier as a way out of the cycle of poverty and depression that he was in. Apparently he had a few exorcisms done to him, and during one of the times, a dragon with a contract had appeared in front of him, and Heinzmann was able to rip up the contract. Apparently after that, his symptoms seemed to disappear for a while, but then eventually came back. Apparently in his diary entries, he revealed that the devil appeared to him frequently, and he was always trying to tempt him. We now know that if he were alive today, a more contemporary diagnosis would be that he had schizophrenia. But honestly, it's also very possible that he was just inhabited by demons to do the devil's work. In our number 6 spot, we have Oliver Cromwell. Known for being an English general, this is a name that is very known as he has been widely depicted as a person with devil's horns. Oliver was being marketed as someone who made a pact with the devil, and that is what explained his rise to power and success. Naturally. When he passed in 1658, there was a massive storm with such crazy winds that the people said that it was the devil coming to claim his soul. The winds were so strong that they were named Oliver's Wind. Eventually, his name became a part of a tale that people told children to get them to behave. Be good or the ghost of Cromwell will drag you to hell. In our number 5 spot today, we have Roger Bolingbroke. In the 1400s, Roger Bolingbroke was accused of casting a horoscope that predicted the death of King Henry. Roger admitted to the public that he had been dealing with the devil and was being encouraged by the Duke of Gloucester's wife Eleanor, aka the 1400s version of a clout chaser. Apparently she urged Roger to perform black magic for her to help her social standing and help her rise to the top. Did I say clout chaser? I meant a historical queen. In any case, Roger confessed, so we're pretty positive he made a deal with the devil. But it didn't save him, as he was eventually hung for his crimes. In our number 4 spot, we have Paulo Gil. Some very old journals in Brazil were discovered talking about a man named Paulo Gil, who was a sorcerer who apparently sold his soul to the devil for his magical powers. The author of the diaries, that went by the name Batista, spoke about how Gil set his sights on a slave, and the slave and the slave owner needed to have an exorcism following the interactions with him. He wrote that Gil and him were at a crossroads when 7 shadowy figures accompanied them. Batista apparently fled, and that made Gil very angry. He wrote about how Gil then cursed the town because Batista wouldn't do what he had asked, and it caused a crazy storm to come to the town. The storm apparently only stopped when Batista prayed to Saint Anne and after he denied giving his blood to Gil. In our number 3 spot, we have Katharina Kepler. This is a woman that is widely known for being a possible sorceress and also known for most likely making a deal with the devil. She is another historical person who is depicted as having devil horns. She is the mother of a very famous astrologer by the name of Johann Kepler. Apparently her friend accused her of poisoning her, most likely just gave her some wine, and Katharina was put in front of the courts for questioning. On this occasion, she was let off from lack of evidence. Later, she was then accused 49 times of dealing with the devil. She also was said to have killed livestock and people by reciting incantations over them, but after many trials, she actually was given her freedom, only for her to actually pass away 6 months later. In our number 2 spot, we have Saint Basil and the Slave. Saint Basil was born in the year 329 AD. He was born into quite a Christian household. He apparently wrote a large body of work that is quite treasured today. However, it's quite possible that he came in contact with the devil, at least on one account, and had met someone who sold their soul to the devil. It was said that he was apparently approached by a woman whose husband sold her soul to the devil and was now his slave. Apparently this man had made a contract with the devil to marry the woman he loved. The devil followed through and he did marry her, but then the man became a slave to the devil. Saint Basil prayed for this man and the contract was delivered by the wind, and Saint Basil was able to tear it up and release the man. So the man got what he wanted, got to marry his love, and got to be freed of the devil. In our number 1 spot we have Lady Gaga, another Hollywood insider who has ties with the devil. Allegedly, Lady Gaga has been quoted as saying, "I deeply regret selling my soul to the dark forces of the Illuminati organization." Okay, so when I hear that, I think, this girl is just memeing us. But apparently in her documentary entitled Gaga 5'2", Gaga speaks about how she was inducted into the Illuminati and how she sold her soul to the devil. She's quoted as saying, "I had just been on stage. It was a good show. I was high on the love and applause from the crowd. I was outside lighting a cigarette. I was aching for more and more of everything. I just wanted to feel good, feel anything. Then this man, a strangely ageless man in a suit, spoke to me. He was leaning against the wall smoking and he said to me, 'I think you've got what it takes. Do you want it?' I asked what it was. I thought he was coming on to me, but he smiled and said, 'Everything. Success, fame, riches, power. Do you want it all?' I looked at him curiously. I couldn't work it out. Then he just stood there and sang one of the songs from my routine earlier. It was otherworldly. I stared at him like he was a dark jewel drenched up from the deepest ocean. I got down on my knees and asked him who I should praise. I looked him right in the eye and told him I wanted it all. I told him I'd do anything. And I bet you anything is what she did."
Coming in at number 10, Robert Johnson. One of the most famous situations of someone selling their soul to the devil. It would seem that he kind of got a raw deal, because even though this dude became one of the best jazz players of all time, he died at 27. Dude, if I'm selling my soul to the devil, you better believe that I'm going to want to live a full life. Like, you get my soul for eternity after I die. The least you can do is let me enjoy the deal until I'm in my 90s. And I want to be a good 90, like I want to be able to run around like I'm Jack LaLanne. But rumor has it that Johnson was horrible at the guitar before he made his deal with the devil. Back then when he played music, it was so bad that cats would scream and people would throw stuff at him. Then he left for a while, went to the mysterious crossroads and came back a god of the guitar. He might have just found a teacher who was willing to show him how to use the tools that he was given that unlock his God-given powers to play the axe like a legend. Or maybe he did go down the easy road and got the devil to hook him up with some unholy powers to juice the whole thing up a little bit. Either way, if I was him, I would have played into the rumor because it would have made you more popular. Everyone would want to come see the man who sold his soul to the devil to play like a god. They would want to know what the devil could give you. Coming in at number 9 with Giuseppe Tartini. This is really how you reach legendary status. Just like Robert Johnson, you want to be a person so good at your craft that the only way people can justify it is by saying that you made a deal with the devil, that you are so unreal at ripping down what you do that you must have done some dirty work to get that good. That's what I want for my life. I want people to be like, this dude was for sure on some performance enhancers, or he was using black magic, because there's no way that anyone could be that good at what this guy did. That's what happened with Giuseppe. This dude was ripping through the violin so good that people were like, the devil must have hooked him up with some good juice. People thought that he could have had 6 fingers on one hand that allowed him to play notes that no one else could ever play. The story goes that Giuseppe woke up and the devil was sitting on the edge of his bed just ripping the violin. Like, the dude was so legendary at the violin that Giuseppe was awestruck. Then the devil just vanished. Giuseppe quickly wrote down everything he could remember from the song, and that became the Devil's Trill Sonata. It blew people away and everyone was breaking down to that song. It was so sick. But Giuseppe said the song that the devil played was even more legendary and was super lit. Those were his exact words. Coming in at number 8, we have Christian Bale, one of the greatest actors of our generation. How does he do it? Well, it must be the devil. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like back in the day, people used to say the best people must have sold their soul to the devil in order to become great, because how else could they do it? Nowadays, if you become rich and famous, you are part of the Illuminati, which worships the devil. I mean, it's the only logical answer, right? It's not like people just work really hard and then they are able to achieve things that that no other person ever could, there's no way that these speculations could be coming from people who haven't achieved anything of substance, looking up at the people above them and then creating insane dialogue so they can cope with their inadequacies. No, that could never be the case, but in the case of Christian Bale, he did actually thank the devil in one of his Golden Globe speeches, which is pretty sus. I mean, he was probably just trying to stir the pot because he knows that people will freak out if he says something like that, or maybe the dude does believe in the devil. I don't know. Alright, coming in the next spot we have Johann Faust. Unlike the other people on this list so far, this dude is a legendary bad guy. Faust was a teacher, professor, and one of the smartest people of his generation. He was alive in the 1500s, and back then he had one goal and one goal only. That was to become the smartest man alive. He wanted people to bow down to him and his genius, and he wanted the recognition that he believed he deserved. Because of this, he had an ego the size of Jupiter and thought that everyone was beneath him. He would beat his students, and he was known for being rude to everyone around him. Now, I don't know if it's because this guy was so mean or if it's because he was really into magic, but people thought that he was working with the devil. I guess if you're mean and you like magic, there would be nothing stopping you from getting into the dark arts. People even thought that this guy's dog was a demon, that it walked around, a demonic dog, and tried to attack people, and when no one was looking, it would morph into a human that would serve Faust. Eventually, the dude died, and it was the spectacular fashion in which this dude died which solidified him as someone who worked with the devil. His lab exploded, and the dude died in a ball of flames. The rumor says that there was a pair of hoof prints burned into the floorboards. Coming number 6, we have Niccolo Paganini. Man, back in the day, if you could rip the violin that good, people thought you must have been up to some funny business. There is no way you could get that good just off of skill and hard work, no way at all. Niccolo Paganini was very young when he picked up the violin. At only age 11, he would touch the instrument for the first time, and right away it would seem that he was destined to be one of the best in the world. When he was still a teenager, he was performing in front of hundreds of people. This guy was definitely a prodigy, but as we have learned, the theme of this list is that people can't trust you if you start to get too good. So there was talk that this dude sold his soul to the devil. People said that he would perform rituals to make himself more powerful, and that he even used dark magic to infuse a soul into his violin so it would sound even more beautiful. People say they saw the devil come out of him and stand next to him when he played. The kicker to this was that he didn't want to be blessed before he died. This was something that was very common back in the day. People wanted a priest to give them some sort of magic so they could go up and hang out with God, but Paganini denied this. Maybe because he knew he was going to hell and it was going to be way cooler and way more fun than going to heaven. Coming in number 5, we have Jimmy Page, once again hitting it with a legendary musician. It would be no surprise that the lead guitarist of Led Zeppelin, one of the greatest rock bands in the world, has suspicions circling around him that he made a deal with the devil. I mean, when rock and roll was coming up, everyone was saying that it was the devil's music. Well, then the devil has great taste, that's all I'm saying. But there's a little more juice to this than Republicans in the 70s being afraid that music was going to bring the end of the world. The thing is, Jimmy was actually a huge fan of the occult and apparently was very open about following the teachings to try and get better at guitar. Hey man, if you're trying to make it to the top, there isn't really anything wrong you can do as long as you're not hurting anyone. Cast a spell from a book to make those fingers move as fast as you can so you're always on the cutting edge of music. And all of this came together when apparently you could hear the devil speak when you played Stairway to Heaven backwards. Yeah, I don't think that is true, but people love to think that the devil is hiding in rock and roll. Coming in number 4, we have Snoop Dogg. Yeah, Snoop D-O-double-G. This dude is a legend. Could you imagine? You're so much of a legend that you became one of the best rappers of all time. You started popping into movies. You changed your name to Snoop Lion for a bit. You become a commentator for a Mike Tyson fight, and you become best friends with Martha Stewart after she goes to jail. This dude has lived a life that would put most people to shame. Now, how has he been able to be so legendary? Was it skill? Was it luck? Was it coming up with his own language that people would actually learn to speak? Well, no, it was of course a deal with the devil, guys. Apparently in a song, Snoop talks about a voice coming into him and telling him to make a deal, and if he took the deal, he would live eternal and forever. Not a bad deal if you ask me. Coming in number 3, we have Urbain Grandier. It should be no surprise that the church has some weird things going on inside its walls. I mean, we know that it's full of creeps today that are doing horrible things, so someone who worships the devil is kind of small potatoes compared to the other things that are going on. Now, Urbain was ahead of his time when it came to being a horrible person in the church. He was apparently summoning the devil all the time and had magical powers. He would put curses on people he didn't like, and there was even a contract found that was said to be signed by the devil, and it was used against him in court. Could you imagine today, someone finds a fake contract and then they use it against you to put you in prison? Lol. lol, that is great. And coming in number 2 we have Antonia Rose. This case of selling your soul to the devil was so famous that it impacted the culture of witches forever. So Rose was living back in the 1400s, and she wasn't doing well. She was trying to take care of her kid, but her husband had left, so she had to do whatever she could to try and keep this kid alive. Apparently the stress of just trying to stay alive started to wear on her, and she started to indulge in psychedelic that you could rub on your skin. She was seen rubbing it on a broom handle and then riding it like you see witches do in popular culture today. Eventually people started to make claims that she was a witch and working with the devil when she attacked someone who came close to her home. She was arrested and convicted of being a witch and selling her soul to the devil. And coming at the number 1 spot we have John Moulton. Now this one takes the number 1 spot just because it's funny. Apparently John Moulton was ready to sell his soul to the devil, but he had a plan. See, if you look through the history of the devil, he isn't the hardest dude to outsmart. John made a deal with the Prince of Darkness that he would sell his soul. The devil came and filled his boots with gold. The devil was like, heck yes, but then the devil came to do his job and he found that Moulton had put his boots at the top of a chimney and cut out the bottoms. Basically, if the devil wanted to fill the boots with gold, he would have had to fill the whole chimney. And the devil hates being tricked, so he burned his house down. Basically, it's the same thing when traders on Wall Street bets learn how to make money off of the stock market, and then Robin Hood stop them from trading because the devil can never lose.
Coming up in our number 10 spot, we have Jack Parsons. Known for being an American engineer, Jack Parsons was alive from 1914 to 1952. He grew up reading sci-fi stories about rocket ships and people going out into space. Apparently, when he was 13 years old, he planned to sell his soul to the devil in exchange for a real live rocket ship. Of course, it didn't work out, but he didn't let it discourage him, and as he grew older, he tried to create a rocket engine powerful enough to travel to outer space. Apparently, in his 20s, he began to follow occult leader Aleister Crowley, and he attempted at doing a spell himself called the Babylon Working. This spell was supposed to help him summon a goddess by the name of Babylon that would help men go to the moon someday. Jack ended up inventing jet fuel that is used by NASA even today, so arguably his spell worked. Or perhaps the devil helped him out and he actually sold his soul without knowing it. I guess we'll never know. In our number 9 spot, we have Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was a very known guitarist of his time. Robert was alive from 1911 to 1938. Not a very long life, and it's probably because the devil said to him, "Come home, my child." Or so I imagine. Word on the street is that he apparently grew up quite poor and wanted a prosperous life, and so he went to the crossroads of a major highway and made a deal with the devil himself. He wrote a song called Me and the Devil Blues, where he talks about walking alongside with the devil. So honestly, that's all the proof I need. He died at only 27 years old, and his music became quite popular after his passing. He apparently was forgiven for his sins after he passed, and was then allowed to be buried in the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church in Mississippi. In our number 8 spot, we have Bob Dylan. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Bob Dylan, Melissa, the musical icon. Do you really think he sold his soul to the devil? Look, I'm just here to present the evidence. You can decide, you can speculate. There is some evidence that points to this being a possibility, and even I'm quite shook. You may or may not know of the song he wrote called Crossroads, where he tells the story of him being at a crossroads with his soul. In the song, he talks about falling to his knees and pleading to the Lord to save his soul. But then he also says, "And I'm standing at the crossroads, believe I'm sinking down." Sinking down into the fiery pits of hell, perhaps? Some speculate that this crossroads that he is referring to is the same crossroads where Robert Johnson supposedly offered his soul to the devil. Apparently, in an interview once while talking about the song, Bob is quoted as saying, "I made a bargain with it a long time ago, and I'm holding up my end." Whatever it is, we never found out, but since he sunk down, I'm going to say that it was probably with Lucifer himself. In our number 7 spot, we have Niccolo Paganini. I really tried with the accent. Born in Italy in 1782, Niccolo was known for being a professional violinist. By the age of 12, he was already touring and doing shows, and by 15, he went on a world tour. Apparently his mom was such a hardcore stage mom that people of the time believed that she summoned Satan to make sure her son sold out concerts. Love this. Even in the 1700s, momagers existed. People also believed that he himself was walking with the devil. Probably a bad rumor because he was so talented, and jealousy probably took over his competitors of the time. But maybe there was some basis for this, as he was said to have abnormally long fingers that moved so quickly, and his skin was very rubbery-like. There are medical explanations for this today, but perhaps people of the time thought that they were witnessing a magical being of some sort, and that's why they attributed it to the devil. Apparently on his deathbed, he freaked out when a Catholic priest came to pray for him, and he said that he would be saved, and for the priest to leave. Spoiler alert, he was not saved, but this last act was all people needed to hear to confirm their speculations. In our number 6 spot, we have Jimmy Page. Yep, another one that I find surprising, but honestly, I'm more of a pop hip-hop listener, so it's not surprising that I'm a little ignorant to the goings-on within a hardcore rock band, so yeah. Jimmy Page was the guitarist for the band Led Zeppelin. Apparently he was very interested in occult teachings, and specifically by the famous occultist Aleister Crowley. He was such a huge fan that he ended up buying Aleister's home in Scotland. He would relay stories about scary sounds he would hear in the house and of how people had died there. This of course led people to think that he was probably involved in some kind of dark magic like a lot of musicians, and quite possibly sold his soul to the devil. Because of his reputation, people began to believe the other band members were Satanists as well. Apparently people believe that if you play Stairway to Heaven backward, you hear demon-like voices. Holy crap, that's terrifying. Can someone do it and maybe report back to me? Okay, thanks. In our number 5 spot, we have Antoine Rose, the iconic witch that led to the world understanding that where there is a witch, there is a magical broomstick. Antoine's story is a tragic one. In today's society, she would be known as a poor single mother that turned to illicit substances. But in the year 1477, the world was much different. Apparently, Antoine was convinced that another witch tried to kidnap her son, but her and her son stabbed the witch in the arm to stop her. Witnesses of the time swore that she spoke to the devil, asking him for help, most likely in a trance-like state from an illicit substance, but again, this was a different time. These witnesses watched her slather on an ointment on a broomstick and placed it in between her legs. Apparently the ointment was a psychedelic herb that can only be absorbed through the skin, so it makes sense as to why she maybe did it this way. Anyways, long story short, she was accused of being a witch, and she eventually confessed to working with the devil. But when you think about it, she probably did think that she had been working with the devil because perhaps she had a weird trip where she believed she spoke to a spirit, and if she didn't have anyone to say, "Hey gal, that's totally normal when you have a crazy trip," like the thousands of people online seem to say, then she props did think she was crazy and that she had talked to the devil. In our number 4 spot, we have Gilles de Rais. You may recognize this famous French name as he was a knight that fought alongside Joan of Arc. He was very close friends with Joan and took it very hard when she was kidnapped and burned at the stake. Apparently after her death, he turned to alchemy and became fascinated with the idea of eternal life. Over the years, he had grown to be one of the richest people in France, and it was said that the Catholic Church was wanting money from him. Ignoring this request, he actually decided to put on a play, but this wasn't just any play, it was a major production with paid actors and set builders alike. It has been said that the church was furious about this, and so they marketed him to the public as a serial killer and convinced them that he worshipped Satan because he practiced alchemy. He was sentenced to death, and afterwards, all of his assets were seized by none other than the Catholic Church. Wow. Look, there's good and bad people in every place of the world, and there's good and bad people that practice every religion. But it just hurts my soul when I hear stories like this, because I'm sure there are tons of good Catholics of the world, and this kind of story paints them all as bad. So why do the bad guys always ruin it for everyone else? In our number 3 spot today, we have Giuseppe Tartini. Excuse me as I butcher these Italian names. Give me a pass, I'm British. Just love me. Giuseppe Tartini is known for being a famous Italian composer and violinist. He was more specifically known for being able to play a song that is so complicated, many people today can't even play it. The song is called The Devil's Trill Sonata, and it is a song that he composed after he was apparently woken up by the devil himself. The devil was sitting on the edge of his bed and playing his violin. Apparently after that night he could magically play trills that are almost impossible for people to play. So naturally everyone assumed that he made a deal with the devil. I believe it. In our number 2 spot we have the Salem Witches. Okay, so if you don't know about the Salem witch trials, you should definitely do some Googling tonight after this, because this is some juicy history. In the late 1600s, there were many women who were said to be friendly with the devil in Salem, Massachusetts. The people of the town drank some kind of marketing Kool-Aid and were convinced that certain citizens had powers and did rituals in the woods. A total of 25 people lost their lives during these trials, and of course these accusations were never proven, and many years later it was discovered that it really was a lie that spread like wildfire. A super sad story and a pretty crazy part of American history. In our number 1 spot we have Aleister Crowley himself. Known for referring to himself as the Beast or the Antichrist, Aleister Crowley is a very famous occult leader and magician. He is also known for having occult gatherings where people were encouraged to explore each other naked while they would do rituals. He was kicked out of Italy in 1923 for word of these gatherings had gotten around. He was once quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. And I guess we can assume that Satan won because he would highly encourage people to focus on selfish acts which were considered satanic at the time. Or perhaps still is, depending on who you ask and what religion you were brought up with. Crowley was known for saying, "Do what thou wilt," which basically means do whatever you want in life. That is exactly what is promoted in society today, so perhaps maybe he was just a forward thinker of the time. But his own mother would call him Satan, so I'm gonna bet that he probs did sell his soul to the devil.